I just want to start by saying I feel like a very blessed guy. I get to do what I love for my job, for my career, for my life. And, all of the places that music has taken me, all of the places I've performed, and the artists I've been able to work with, I don't take a single second of that for granted. I know that I'm a very fortunate person to have the life that I have. A career in music is rarely just one thing. It's rarely just one job. I mean, there are people that are just the drummer for a band, or just mostly a career in music is built on a combination of things. You can be a performer, you can be a recording artist, you give master classes, clinics, you do talks, you teach, and the reason that most professional musicians are well-rounded in that way is because when you are doing something that you love for a living, when you're doing your life's work, and I'm going to get back to that life's work idea as we go today. But when you're doing your life's work, it's only natural to want to give back. And of all of the things that I do in my career, and all of the places that my career has led me, one of the most rewarding things I do is I get to have time like this with students. And the reason I feel that way is I think that the best thing that I can do today for you is to inspire you to be you. Okay? And to inspire you to do what you do better. And that's what I want our time this evening to be about. Okay? So I know that there are some questions that you guys have for me, and I'm hoping that I get a little chance to play as well and show you some things from where I am right now in my studio. But let's go ahead, if it's okay with Mr. Ford, if it's okay to start with some questions, that would be great.
That sounds great, Tom. Thank you so much for that introduction. I know we all feel the same in terms of giving back. We teach, every week, of course, and we're all on stage in different ways, and so this is wonderful that about your perspective you just mentioned. For those of you that heard the recording button, I forgot to turn the recording on earlier. This is UNT's Percussion, 10 Questions Plus with Tom Sharpe. Here we go with our first question. We're going to start tonight actually with Sam Cook. Sam, are you there?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, Sam.
Hello. My question is sort of like two parts. So, with your debut CD, like Setting Myself on Fire, receiving multiple awards and nominations, can you just talk about what your process was behind crafting it? And also, do you have any advice for someone who wants to create their own music like you have?
Yes, absolutely. I I actually started my composing career very late. I had already gone through college and received a master's degree in classical percussion performance, and I was actually on a very classical path. I was in an orchestra in Chicago, the Civic Orchestra of Chicago, and working downtown in the city with other orchestras and freelancing. And I really felt like that was going to be my career, was to be a classical percussionist. I always have had a little, I suppose more than a little rock side in me as well, and so I was also doing band things. But with all of that, having some relative success at a young age, just out of college, I still felt like there was some sort of void in my life, and I was wondering what it was. And at that point, I had actually never written anything. And here I am, 20, 5, 26, 27 years old, and just, extremely fortunate to perform wonderful works, works by the masters, and yet still feeling like I had something to give that I hadn't done. And one day I just actually sat down at the piano, and I thought, don't try to write anything in a certain style. Just actually don't try to write at all. Just play and see what happens. And that's really very loosely how I do compose. Is sometimes I will sit down with the intent to write something, but more often than not, I just sit down and try to let ideas flow and not be worried about writing anything. And some days those sessions result in something cool, and other days those sessions result in nothing, except for that you are disciplined to sit down and do it every day. And so I started to write, and it started to seem like, I had some ideas going. And from there, actually, at this point, I was in a drum troupe in Chicago. And it was so awesome. It was like a koto drumming meets taekwondo meets dance theater, and it was a really amazing experience to be in that group. And I had actually started to write some things, it was just a drumming group, and I actually started to write some things for that group. And as I'm writing these drum grooves, I'm realizing that I'm feeling more than these are not just going to be drumming pieces. I have more layers to put on these pieces. And that's where my background as a pianist came into play, and I started to think about layering melodies and harmonies and different things on top of these drum rhythms. So if you listen to that album in its entirety, you can hear that there's a real ebb and flow between pieces that began as drum grooves that then became layered with harmony and melody, and pieces that actually started from the piano and then were accompanied by percussion. So the way that I wrote that album was a total layering of myself. So track over track over track on computer, which I'm sure you guys are well versed in all the ways to do that. From Pro Tools and Logic to standalone machines that are track recorders. Actually, back when I wrote that album, it started out as one of those little track recorders, because this was right when the computer recording was starting. So I started it on a track recorder and layered all of those parts, and then I took it to a professional studio and took it from there. But that album is basically me just over and over and over again. Now, that makes it sound now like there's a full band and it's just me playing, which actually, when I completed the album, I decided to start to, send it around, and one of the places I sent it was to a big songwriting composition contest, and I won that contest. And the first thing they asked me to do on the phone after they tell me that I won the contest is to go and perform my work at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. And so that was the debut performance of my music at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I don't think many people can say that. It was their debut performance. But after I accepted and said, absolutely, I'd love to come and perform there, I hung up the phone and I thought, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I had layered and layered myself over and over again, and I thought, how am I going to recreate this music? Um, I'm going to have to hire a huge group every time I want to play my own work. And I realized how limiting that was. And I realized that one thing as an artist that you need to do is you need to be able to show your work effectively on different levels. And, you know, whether or not you are writing, you're part of a band, or whether you're writing a symphony or writing a percussion ensemble piece, if you're limited to the people that have to play it with you, then you are limited. And that doesn't mean that it can't happen. But for me, and thinking about how my career was going to take shape, I felt like I needed to be able to effectively perform my work as a solo artist. And so I started to create kind of this percussion world that I'm actually sitting in right now. As we go, I'll move the camera back so you can see where I am right now. Of instruments, acoustic and electronic, that were going to allow me to create this music as a soloist. Now, I don't feel like I need to create it note for note as what's on the CDs, and I don't feel like, you know, I need to have every part represented, but I do need to have it feel like it's the work, and I do want it to be something that I'm happy with, because I know that if I feel like I'm happy with something, chances are other people are going to feel that too. So let's see, is that just the first part of your question? Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I guess the second part would be just if you have any advice for someone who wants to start creating music like how you have been doing.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the best advice I can give you, I mean, you guys are already in the right place. So, I mean, that's, you know, you're miles ahead of a lot of people. You know, the best thing I can tell you is to trust yourself, to be patient. Go ahead and discipline yourself to sit down and try to write on some sort of a schedule, and not necessarily, you know, not necessarily expecting that you're going to write every day, but you know, practicing a good habit. And you know, we as humans are very very resistant to learning new habits. Our brains want to do what they have already done. So brains conserve energy that way. So you really have to kind of go out of your comfort zone to learn anything new, and it takes a longer period of time to develop that good habit than it does to develop, you know, something, it's a bad habit. Those seem to come very easily to us, right? Well, why is that? Well, because they're easier. And any, you know, a good habit is harder to develop. It takes longer to develop. And so you have to step out of your comfort zone and carve that time to sit down in a quiet environment where you are not distracted, and to just carve out that time for yourself to either write or to just play, let ideas happen. Don't be afraid of your own talent, your own creativity, and your uniqueness. You know, each of us are unique in our own way, and that's what's going to make your work special.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tom. Wow. Hey, before we go to the second question, just want to point this out because it doesn't happen. It's never happened yet, because this guy that just joined us is such a busy man. The Dean of the College of Music, John Richmond, is with us. John, would you like to say hi?
Absolutely. It's great to see everyone. And to Tom, it's so great to have you with us tonight. Thanks a lot. We really appreciate your making time in your schedule. I know it's a It's been a kind of a weird time for all of us in a certain way, but we were just thrilled that you could work us into your schedule, and we're going to have to figure out an opportunity for a more traditional kind of a thing in the future. But wow, it's great to have you with us tonight. Thanks.
It's my pleasure, and it's wonderful to meet you. I recall our conversation last year before the world changed, and I'm looking forward to that opportunity to come see you all in person.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for being here, John. That's just wonderful. It's so great that we're so fortunate to have such a wonderful administration at our College of Music. All right, let's go on with our second question, which is from Miss Kailey Filben. Kailey?
Hi, Mr. Sharpe. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight.
Hi, Kailey.
So my question for you is, were you a part of the composition process with Styx? And did your drum parts actually play a big part in composing these songs, or were you handed charts and expected to read them down?
Actually, so that's a great question, and that band has been around for a long time, and although I'm old in comparison to you guys, I did join up with Dennis DeYoung at the music of Styx. I joined kind of long after the compositions were created. So that actually brings some real challenges there, because that both with the Styx music and with Mannheim Steamroller's music, these are classic, timeless pieces that everyone knows. And so when you come into a situation like that, it's actually it can be tricky, because you're balancing this long history of these pieces and how people know them from the radio and from albums that they've sat and listened to just until the vinyl wears out, and then playing these pieces in concert. You always need to be mindful of that history. Now that said, neither of those groups are tributes to anything. They're their own entities, and so I have never felt like I've needed to recreate note for note of what's on those albums. So there's a balance between that history and also, I trust myself enough to know, and I've listened and studied the music enough to know that needs to stay. That part needs to stay. And this part, there's some flexibility maybe for me to be creative. So, anything that, there's a lot of signature grooves, a lot of signature drum fills and things like that people are expecting to hear. And so I keep those in. And then some of the other things, I am okay to explore, and kind of am given the green light to explore some things and keep the music going forward. So that's the other part of the balance between the history of what people know and are expecting to hear, and keeping the music sounding fresh and modern. So, drumming styles have changed over the years, and just even listening to some of the guys, the Styx guys that played that music before me, very different. Some are playing it incredibly busy, and others are playing it very, very back pocket. So you kind of put that all in a big creative pot and mix it around and see. That's why, again, I also feel like it's really important to have my own work and to have my own music, because there are a lot of times where you try an idea and the director of the group that you're in is going to say no. And so where does that idea go? Well, that idea for me goes into my own work, and that's fine. So all the way from creativity to the way that you lead a band. It's very important for you to kind of have something that is yours. That's where all of those ideas can go if you're in an environment where those ideas don't seem to work. I was not handed a single chart. No. However, I do chart everything. I chart everything, and I believe that it helps to study the music, to have it charted. I don't do it on computer, although I have Sibelius and Finale and could computerize it, but I actually write out my charts, because if I'm taking the time to write out my chart, it seems to become more of an internalization for me. Like, I can picture myself writing it, when I need to play it. And another thing that's very important for me is that by the time I get to rehearsal 1, those charts are not in my sight. So I have already memorized everything by the first rehearsal. Because, I know that you guys know this, but practice and rehearsal, those are two different things. And so I don't want to be wasting anyone else's time that is there expecting us to be rehearsing these pieces together when I'm reading a chart and trying to figure out my part. So I am very adamant about showing up to my shows with everything memorized. And that does depend, that's the way that my career has gone. And I know that if you're like a classical musician, if you're in an orchestra, you're really not able to do that. And it's not expected of you. So there's a lot of music reading. But when I'm on stage, I feel like there's a show going on, and I'm part of a show. And if I have my nose buried in a piece of music, then I am missing out on what I'm really meant to do, which is I'm meant to create this experience between myself, the group, and the audience. And I can't do that if I'm stuck in music. I have to be mentally prepared for it. And the music also has to be a part of me too, where, when something comes up that you don't expect, your instinct and intuition takes over.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Tom, here's a 2-minute question for you. How does somebody become a drummer for a classic rock band? How did that happen for you?
Yeah, I think that someone was going to ask me this, yes?
Oh, really? Did I jump in on somebody? Okay.
That's
Sorry.
okay.
Go for it.
We can take that one is fine.
Tom, you might be right. I didn't realize they were going to ask that directly. Oh, there it is. You're right, down at the end. Tell you what, that's from Will O'Rourke. I won't take that from him. Never mind. Here we go. Here we go. Question number 3. This is from Graham Viegut. Graham, are you there?
Hello. Hi, Mr. Sharpe. Thanks for
Hi,
being
Graham.
with us tonight. This
My
has
pleasure.
already been great, and so I'm just looking forward to more. And so can you discuss your formative years at Interlochen and DePaul and talk about how like your classical teachers and training in the classical performance area impacts the music you still play today?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in Detroit, in a suburb of Detroit, and Interlochen is an arts academy. It's a high school in northern Michigan, and during the summer it's an arts camp. And so even as I was a middle schooler, I was already going to arts camp there in the summers. And I realized for me that where I was at that point in my small town, that it was going to be better for me to go to a place where I was surrounded by people that were like-minded people. And so I kind of went from a place where I I guess what, a big fish, right? Big fish in a small town type of thing. And went to a place where everyone was just like amazing. And you might think, well, you guys are, that's where you guys are. So that's what happened to me in high school. And, I don't know if you ever feel, that it's intimidating to be around such talent all the time. I know that for me, I never felt that. I kind of just felt like we were all in this thing together, and to surround yourself with like-minded people, you're going to go the way of what you see, what you hear the most. So if you surround yourself with people that are all aspiring to be professional musicians, that's the way that you're going to go. And so my time at Interlochen, I felt was very, very just instrumental for me, no pun intended, but to get me to the level that I needed to get to a university that would help me get to where I wanted to go. I chose DePaul University over a number of schools, and I'm really grateful for my time there. DePaul is in Chicago, and it allowed me to, first of all, what attracted me to it, were the teachers. They were all in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, in the pit for the Chicago Lyric Opera. The drum set players were, the top freelance drum set players in Chicago, and so that drew me to DePaul, and also the fact that it was Chicago, and that by the time I got to being an upperclassman, I was performing professionally in the city. And that was important for me in my career, as opposed to, more of a campus life university. So, aside from my classical teachers being just amazing and like your teachers are there, and all of the musicianship that I learned from them, and technique, and everything that you learn in school, really the teachers taught me really more about being prepared, and being professional on every level, showing up on time, knowing what you're doing, not wasting other people's time, these types of things have stuck with me through my whole career, as far as having a professional attitude. Remember that there are tons of great players, and there are tons of great jobs too, but I don't know if it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So what's going to separate you from everyone else showing up at the same job? It's going to be your playing, of course, but it's also going to be your professionalism. You're not going to show up and ask for a gig rug, or you forgot your Styx or something like that. And that's something that I've carried with me even now, is that showing up and being professional. Another thing, that I'm not playing orchestral music right now, but there are always hints of orchestral music in other types of music. So I'm always able to use my classical chops as far as tambourines and glockenspiels, and all different triangle techniques, and all of those things. I feel like even with the music of Styx, that I was able to bring like a more intellectual side to it, a more artistic side to the playing. And we would do shows with symphony orchestras, and you know, a lot of that is led from the drums. Just by being the drummer, you're kind of driving the thing. So you know, I was always very grateful to know to have my orchestral background, and it also helped bridge the gap between two very different types of musicians working together. You know, the rock guys come in and they have a way of doing things, and the orchestral musicians come in and they have a way of doing things. And I would always make sure that, you know, when we were doing one of our orchestral shows, and you know, I've got this big drum set right in the middle of the stage, and all the orchestral musicians are panned around me. I would always go back and introduce myself to the percussionist, ask how the music was going, anything I need to do, tell them, you know, I'm going to be giving some cues, and this is the way that this part goes. And you know, I've always tried to bridge the gap between those two very different styles of music, and oftentimes like two different types of musicians coming together in that atmosphere. So, you know, even there was one time even that I had to conduct the show, and it was a sort of a last minute thing, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, this is the way this show is going, and Tom, we want you to conduct. So I did one of those shows from the podium. So there's always a reason that I look back to, and I'm grateful for my orchestral background.
Mark, can I step in for a second? Sorry, I'm late. Hi, Tom. My name is Quincy Davis. I teach drum set here at the school.
Hi, Quincy. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I just wanted to step in because I am a fellow Michigander, and also I'm from Grand Rapids. Also a fellow Interlochen Arts Academy graduate.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I just wanted to say hi, and
great to
thank
meet
you so much for being here. Who was your teacher? Just curious. Who did you study percussion with at Interlochen?
Oh, okay. Who was there when I was there? Was it John Alfieri, or was that?
Was it Alfie? That's who I studied with.
Okay. I'm trying to. The reason I'm hazy on it is I had my my camp time there too, and I can't remember. Was he camp or was he IA? He
was academy.
Yes,
Yeah.
It was him. It was John Alfieri.
Oh, okay, great. We had the same teacher.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and we actually still keep in touch. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Very nice. Anyway, I just wanted to say hi.
Very nice to meet you.
You too. Sorry I was late.
Grand Rapids too. Grand Rapids is great, and trying to think about where we play there, but I've done a number of shows in Grand Rapids, and have some family there too.
Great.
Wonderful. Hi, Quincy. Welcome. We're going on now to Megan Campbell. Megan, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, it's really nice to meet you. My question is, I guess early on, how did you start growing your audience and your following without the internet? Because that's wild for all of us. And also, what business skills would you recommend to current music majors now so that we can become stronger entrepreneurs for our own careers?
Okay, great questions. Believe it or not, Megan, I did have internet. But yeah, so that has been a part of my life. But you know, you're right that it was back when you're putting CDs in the mail and hoping that people get them. So you know, and waiting 2 weeks and calling on the phone instead of so yes, it was very different than the instantaneous connections that we can make now. really, it all starts with, I mean, it starts with what I like to call building your artistic pyramid. Okay? And that is, make sure that you have intent on what you're trying to do. In other words, I know that you guys are all percussionists, but you're probably studying different things, and you have different goals that you want to achieve. So it's important that you decide, where is the top of that pyramid? Are you an artist first? Are you a performer? Are you a musician? Are you a composer? Are you a drummer? Once you find out where that top of your pyramid is, then your career can kind of start to take a path and start to get some tiers that go down. If you want a career as a drummer, then you're going to go a different way than if you're wanting to have a career as a classical percussionist, or if you're wanting to be a composer, or if the top of that pyramid is basically it really should be that the top of the pyramid should be that you want to be an artist. Okay? And then from there, all of those different branches can go down. No one looks back and thinks that they wishes they didn't create so much art. Okay, so it's important to just know that the time that you spend now, whatever it is that you're doing and how you're creating this artistic pyramid, is going to be of value to you your whole life. Okay? Now, I know that's a little bit vague as far as, well, how do I get my career started? One thing that we all kind of have to think about is this idea of, well, how do we make money doing this? How do we avoid the starving artist, stigma? And now that you are, once you get out of school, how do you sell your art? How do you sell your music? One thing that I learned very early on, I was at a conference in Nashville, and I performed one piece at a conference in Nashville, and a music entertainment lawyer came up to me afterwards, and he said, "Don't sell yourself short." He said, "Your work has value." And I think, there's another way to say that and that is, don't play for free. I mean, think, your work does have value, and it's important that you recognize that. So, some other things to think about are, okay, well, there used to be a big deal about getting signed, right? Okay, so I really encourage you guys at your age to stop thinking that way. The music landscape has changed dramatically since trying to get a record deal and trying to get signed. So really what you should be doing now in school and when you get out of school, instead of, somehow young musicians still are hanging on to this idea of that they need to get signed or they're going to get discovered. What you really should do, unless you're trying to make pop top 40 records, you should be focused on getting your own shows, making your own recordings, building your fan base from the ground up. It's very easy these days to get your music on things like iTunes, and that goes to Spotify and all of the different places. And there are different ways that people think about that too. And some people think, well, I'm not going to make any money on Spotify. Well, maybe you're not. I mean, I get Spotify statements, and you know, they're a mile long like this, and they add up to nothing. So, you know, but nevertheless, it's still important to be getting your music out there, and just believing in what you're doing, and do it. The other things will come later, you know. I always think, you know, as far as might be a little bit of a tangent, but as far as like you know, things like Spotify that don't pay you very much. You know, when I would do shows and have CDs for sale, there's always a big thing about, oh, well, who's going to watch the CD table, and you know, and who, you know, you don't want someone stealing your CD. And I'm thinking, you know what? If someone wants my CD that bad, they can have it with my blessing. So there are other ways, you know, just try to think maybe more big picture than that. As far as like more, you know, more tangible things to do to actually make money, you know, try to think outside the box a little bit as far as like look for sponsorships in your town. There are people and there are companies that do have money and they do want to support artists. And believe it or not, there are still a lot of places that just want to hear something cool. And those places, you know, they're not likely to be the club that's booking, you know, 5 bands a night and you get slot 2 at whatever time. And it's, you maybe need to think outside the box a little bit more than that. And find cooler venues to play. You know, performing arts centers, even libraries have concert series, and those are really wonderful events because the people there really want to hear you, and the people that booked you really want to hear you. So, you know, I guess I will backtrack a little bit and say, you know, you don't have to never play for free, but make sure that you, again, have intent for what you're doing, okay? Are you playing a show because you're hoping to get discovered? That's going to be a tough one, okay? Now, nobody gets discovered from their basement, it's true. But if you're that second slot in the club and you're thinking that some music executive is going to be there just waiting to sign you, it's really not how it works. So do your shows, make your music, enjoy your process, and think of unique ways and unique places to present yourself. So, you know, another thing is you know, charity events are always are cool too, and so that goes to, you know, just me kind of going back to the, you know, there are a lot of ways to present your music that are more than what a lot of people are trying to do. So think outside the box, and again, go back to having trust and faith in yourself and your work. I always go back to this thought, because artists are we're very hard on ourselves, right? Oh, my work's not good enough. No one's going to like it. Well, the flip side is that if you don't like your work, then chances are it's going to be a tough sell. And if you do like your work and you're confident about your work, then that's going to show through too. Okay? So being confident and being humble are not opposites. Okay? You can do both. You can have both. One doesn't mean the other. So, you know, go ahead and if you feel proud of your work, chances are other people are going to like it too. And that's how you will build.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Tom. Students, what Tom is saying right now is gold. Okay, this is really wonderful advice for all of us to be able to envision and create our own path for our own careers. And we're the ones in charge. When you get out of school, you're the one that's going to make the decisions. As he said, no one's going to come along and pat you on the back and say, here's your gig. You know, you are going to create those opportunities. Thank you so much, Tom. That was wonderful. Let's go on now to Jacob Fullinwider. Jacob?
Hello, Mr. Sharpe. It's such a pleasure to have you with us tonight.
Hi, Jacob.
My question for you is, how have multiple genres influenced your playing today, and do you have an instrument or genre that you gravitate towards?
Okay. Let's see. When I started to compose my music, for whatever reason, I started to hear a lot of ethnic percussion in my work, and so really I'm, at that time when I started to write, I was actually in a well. Let me back up a little bit. I was starting to hear, instruments like djembes, doumbeks, tabla, in my work, and I'm not sure why. On some level, I think that that's what makes it special, is because I didn't really intend for it to be in there. So from there, I actually started to study some of these instruments and learn about different cultures and things. And I was in a I actually started studying tabla, and my teacher said, "Oh, you should really check out these the Chicago kirtan scene." And so I was like, "Okay, well, what is that?" And well, kirtan is this call and response type chanting that is typically done with several instruments, but one of the main ones is a tabla player, and then one of them is a pump organ player called a harmonium, and it's kind of led. It's a very spiritual thing. It's kind of like based around Hindi chants, and that sort of took me on a different path of including these instruments in my work. But the main thing is that I actually start hearing these instruments, and then I think, boy, I really need to learn more about this, and that's how it has worked for me. So as far as ethnic sounds that I like, I really gravitate towards. I do gravitate towards tabla sounds a lot, and sometimes I will in a playing environment. Tabla is its own thing. I mean, I'm just scratching the surface of. I mean, tabla masters are like, that's what they do. That's their life. That's their life's work. And for me, I'm like, I just want tabla in my pieces. I just want to be able to play it so I can have it in my work. So I learned how to play it. And sometimes I will in this environment that you're going to see in a minute, sometimes I will set tabla to a side and play some tabla. And other times I'll do it with electronics. And I'm very drawn to that too, is the blending of traditional ethnic instruments, both westernized and other cultures, the blending of those instruments with a more modern and electronic sound. So more so than me gravitating towards one culture or one set of instruments, I think that one of the strengths of my music and the uniqueness of it is the blending of all of these different cultures together. So I use a djembe with tabla, with bongos, Chinese cymbals. I have, I'm making some sound right now with my feet. I have gungrus on my feet right now. So all of these things coming together are what I feel is a strength of my music and makes my music unique.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Jacob. Okay, Emma Kieselhorst, are you there?
Hi.
Hi, Emma.
So my question is, what do you find the most gratifying about performing and composing? And then what artists or composers inspire you as a musician?
Okay. Sorry, Emma, I have I just have a couple of notes that I want to get in front of me before I start. And you are here. Okay. Okay. You know, the most gratifying thing for me as a musician is to be an inspiration. I look at my career and I think, you know, if I wasn't a musician, what would I be doing? And I actually have no idea, but I know it would be something that would be inspiring to others. And I actually think about my career and my music as a vehicle for me to inspire people like you. I mean, Look, this can be a tough field, you guys, and artists, like, you know, we really tend to wear our hearts on our sleeves, you know, and sometimes it's hard to stay up all the time, you know, and especially I think artists especially feel this. You know, of course now a lot of people are feeling it everywhere, but it's hard to be positive all the time, and I think that artists really sometimes have a hard time with that. So I feel like, you know, it doesn't matter to me if I'm playing for 10,000 people or if I'm playing to a room of 50 people. If those people leave inspired, then I've done my job. And actually, I almost sometimes feel better about the 50 people, you know, because I know that I have more of a chance to make a positive, personal connection with them than looking out onto a sea of people. Now, everything, that's cool too, but, you know, once you've done that, and it's like, you know, nothing becomes old, but once you've done it enough, you start to think about what is more important to you. And for me, you know, the most gratifying thing about performing and composing is the opportunity to reach people, to inspire people, to help people to, you know, get away from this idea of you know, being a struggling artist or a tormented artist, you know, and helping people to be happy. So how can you be happy? Well, in my experience, the happiest people are usually the ones that are giving. Okay? So try to find a way to make your art and make your music and make your goals in life bigger than you. Now, they are anyway, okay? But it's a little hard to wrap your head around that sometimes. And so, you know, I like to ask myself a simple question, you know, maybe not daily, but, you know, at the end of the day, ask yourself this: is someone better off for seeing or hearing your work? You know, there's only one way to be an inspiration to others, and that is to lead by example. And that's what is important to me, is to make sure that I'm being a positive influence and maybe giving somebody that message or just that word that has lifted them up for the day. I recall, there was one I actually don't actually recall the performance, but it was one of my own concerts. I was performing in this way with my percussion instruments surrounding me. And I performed one of my concerts, and a young, maybe your age, person came up to me afterwards, and I felt like he was almost kind of like half not there, like his thoughts were. He was like, he goes, "Wow, I had no idea. I had no idea that could be done." And the way that he said it was almost not like he was complimenting me as much as he was thinking about all of the things that he could now do. And that is what performing, composing, and being in front of people is all about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma.
All right, thank you both. Now, Yun-Chen Chou. Yun-Chen?
Hello, Mr. Sharpe.
Hi, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. So my question for you is, how did you become the drummer for Mannheim Steamroller? How has working with Chip Davis influenced your composition and performing? And can you share with us your favorite memory from being on tour, making recordings with him?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that you do, try to think of it as leading to something else. Okay, so like I very much am a advocate to say that everything is like circular, right? One thing that you do leads to another thing that you do. So I was actually already on tour with Dennis DeYoung, and I was invited to join Mannheim Steamroller. Actually invited to somewhat audition for Mannheim Steamroller, but at that point I think that I felt like I was either going to show up and start the tour, or I guess they would have sent me home. But it seemed to me that like at that point, when I was invited to go out and to meet Chip Davis, that he knew that I was his guy already. Now Chip is a drummer, and so for years he not only is he an incredible mastermind behind the whole Mannheim Steamroller. It really is him. It's him and everybody else. That's the way that it goes. And he just masterminds the whole thing, writes it all. But when the group would tour, he was the drummer, and so he ran into some physical ailments where he was feeling like he wasn't going to be able to handle that anymore, and so that's how I was invited to perform. And so I went out. The group's based in Omaha, Nebraska, and I went out just a week before the tour started. And Chip and I went through some songs, and he's a cool guy, and he's a fun guy, and he not only wanted to hear me play his music, but he wanted to show me different things, and he has a lot of land at his place, and he has a recording studio set up in the woods, and he's like, "Hey, come on, let's go and see this cool thing that I have." So it was a really fun time. Now, as far as what has that done for my own music and my own composition, I can't help but think, that some of it has subconsciously gotten into my work as well. I try to have a well-rounded thought and make sure that I'm not trying to imitate anyone. A lot of my work that is out on CD I wrote before I joined Mannheim. And so sometimes I kind of think, well, any comparisons that I have to that group, maybe that's why I was invited to join to begin with, is because my work has some, similarities in the sense that it's orchestral, in the sense that it's, highly percussive, lots of different time changes, lots of kind of uniqueness to it that goes beyond what you would just normally hear. Looking at someone like that and him having just a remarkable career that has spanned, 40 plus years, he's a pioneer of a style of music. And I like to, sometimes I think, well, I wonder if my music is like that. Hopefully it is. I don't know anyone that writes and performs like, exactly the same way that I do. But, I really look to him as a mentor of somebody that has done things the right way, and that, he is not only looking back on his amazing career, but it always has an eye to the future too. And our shows are always different, and there's always new music in them, which is really remarkable for someone who could just sustain the group by the hits that everybody wants us to play. There are always new works in the show, new lights, new sets, and I look at that as an inspiration for me, and someone like me who feels so adamant about giving to you guys and your generation. It's really cool for me to have people like that to look up to, that are not just people that I see on in a show or something, but people that I actually know. Oh, there was a part 2 to that, yes? Some favorite tour stories, or how did you say again? Favorite memories, yes, of being on tour. I would have to say, some of the things that we did. We've done some shows with on NBC with some professional skaters and professional ice skaters, and those stick out to me as really, really cool things, like hanging out with Christy Yamaguchi and Brian Boitano and all of those Olympic gold medal skaters. And here we are doing this show together where they're skating and we're playing Mannheim music, and it's on NBC, and it's a holiday special, and here I am, doing that. And things like that stick out to me. We went to Alaska one year, and that was amazing. Even, it was on the Christmas tour, and even in the dead of winter in Alaska, you'd think, okay, and it's just an otherworldly place. It's so beautiful. Actually, one that sticks out really well is we performed at Austin City Limits, and that is of course it's an iconic place to play, and it was a little we usually don't play club shows like that, and I think that venue is a little more kind of in between a concert hall and a club, and so we kind of had to cram in there a little bit as far as getting all of our stuff on that stage. But it was really cool just to know, wow, this is everybody knows about Austin City Limits, and to say that I played that. Summerfest in Milwaukee is always a good one that I really like. And I think there was, there's one show that sticks out to me. I can't remember where it was, but they told us there were 100,000 people there. And so, I did touch on this earlier, and the thought of playing to that many people, and it really is something to look out and to see that many, it just looks like a wave, you know, and it's really something. But again, I get just as much of a satisfaction of playing to a small place and having that personal connection with people. So there are so many just great things about tour. Now, it's pretty much everything good and challenging that you would think. So there are, you know, you have to make sure that you are really ready to do something like that. You have to have a moral compass about you when you're on tour, because, you know, any of the stories that you have heard, good and bad, you know, they all do happen. So it's important that you are mentally, you know, prepared, and you have a good moral compass on you to do something like be in touring groups. And I think those are my tour favorites for now.
That's awesome. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Great. Okay, we're going to go quickly to Marcus Alvarado.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. My question is, can you describe your experience playing on live TV and how it differs from playing in a live concert? And can you share what you learned from performing in your early broadcasts?
Yeah, live TV is interesting. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of, you know, places that you have to be at certain times and things like that. You know, anytime that you are playing for something that you know is going to be seen again, I feel like you immediately have a different mentality about you. And just very simply, think of it this way. Say you've been practicing a piece for a while, and then you decide you're going to just put your phone up and hit record. How does that next time go through? How does that one differ from the other times that you practice that piece? You feel differently about it. It probably doesn't go as well right away. And that is because there's something that you know that, you know, it's not just a one-time thing, that people are going to be seeing this again and again. So I actually think that it's an important practice for anyone to record yourself a lot, because as soon as you hit that button, things change. So what happens? You fall back on your level of preparedness. You fall back on your level of training. You fall back on your level of instinct and intuition, and you fall back on your muscle memory. Because a lot of times playing a show like that, playing on live TV, or, you know, or other places too, but playing on a live, on a program that is going to be syndicated and seen again, it almost feels like you really do have to rely on, you know, being prepared for anything unexpected. So sometimes I feel like I'm almost observing myself instead of having the same like feeling as you know, as a normal show, as a regular show. It's almost like I feel like I kind of go out of my body and like observe this person doing this show. So the person doing that show needs to have played it enough times that's going to work, that it's in my body, it's in my muscles, my instincts are going to kick in, and you know, those are the types of things that kind of pull you through this environment that's very different from normal. What was the second part?
Could you share what you learned from performing from your earliest broadcasts?
Oh, yes. Actually, yeah, actually more so, it's really important to look back on your performances. So again, this is going to go back to try to record yourself a lot. Some of the early things that I did, I mean, you can definitely learn from it. A lot of times when I'm speaking, I feel like, wow, I really have come a long way in the way that I speak to people. And when I look back on some of the earlier things that I did, I think that, that I sounded young. I sounded like I wasn't quite sure of what I was doing yet. So I think it does go back to that really as a student of any age, try to record yourself as much as possible and study that. So, those are some of the things that I take from it. I think we all have tendencies, like when something's not going well, to have a default, right? Like where does your muscle memory go, or where do your instincts go when something isn't going quite well? And I think that I've learned how to channel that a lot better, as I've grown, to find these instances where something isn't going exactly as planned, and again, kind of look at it and go, wow, this is interesting what's happening right now. I wonder how I'm going to get out of this one. Instead of, instead of the panic, right? And the freezing up, or, the not being able to go on. It's almost like someone else is doing this thing and you're like, wow, I wonder what's going to happen next. So, things like that just come from maturity, The easiest way to forget about a performance that doesn't go so well is to have that next performance coming up soon, right? So, time and your next performance are two easy ways to let go of something that didn't go quite well. But really, I like to find those moments as like very interesting now, and sometimes creative. I know that I used to have a tendency to, when something wasn't going well, to overplay. So the next thing I would do was play more. And I've learned how to relax in those situations too, and just like let things happen and let things flow instead of trying to control it. So I really feel like as I go, I feel like my music and the music I play is just, I'm sort of like the vehicle that this is channeling through, more so that I'm trying to control what's happening.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's great, Tom. We talk often here about if we're going to become a great musician, we need to be great listeners, and the students need to listen to themselves, in the way that you just described. That's really perfect. We've got two more questions for you on our list here. Our next one is Sophia Suante.
Hello, Mr. Sharpe. How are you?
Hi, Sophia. I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
I want to first thank you for coming to talk with us and answering our questions.
Pleasure.
So my question was, how did you go about learning different instruments outside the Western classical standard, which I would guess is more of your orchestral side of things when you study at DePaul? And I wanted to ask, what was the process of learning those instruments and discovering it, then learning them? And was there like a guru that you learned from, or did you learn all these instruments on your own? And what was all that about?
Yeah, it's kind of a combination of all of those things. I mean, some of them, one wonderful thing about percussion is that you are never going to learn it all. And just as soon as you think that, you've got a number of things that well, guess what? Some new instrument that you want to learn has completely different techniques to it, and it's that can be daunting, that can feel like, oh, I'm never going to master everything. Well, change your thinking and be grateful, right? That as as really as any instrumentalist and their instrument, but especially as a percussionist, you have the opportunity to learn for your whole life. And all you have to do is want to. So, it's okay to be a beginner at something. So have patience with yourself. I know that it can be frustrating, but it's okay to allow yourself to be where you are with your learning. Okay, and it's important that you don't just look at the goal, just look at the end result, but it is the path. And it's okay that something takes a long time. If you have it in your heart to do it, then it's worth that time, because here's the thing. I hear this a lot, like with people that they want to learn how to play an instrument, okay? Or they want to go to school and get a degree. Or they have these ambitions that take time. And they use that as an excuse to not do it. You guys are how old right now? Ish. 18, 19, 20, right? 21? Those areas? Okay. If you feel like you want to get a master's degree, if you feel like you want to get a doctorate degree, and you ever said to yourself, well, I want these things, but man, if I get a doctorate, I'm not going to be, I'll be 30 by the time I have my doctorate. Well, guess what? You're going to be 30 anyway. Okay? So you might as well go for it. You might as well go for what you want, because the time is going to pass whether you do it or not. Okay? So you can take that as far as your education. You can take it as simple as that you want to learn a new instrument, but you think, you know what, I'm so starting from scratch that I don't want to do it. Well, that time is going to go by, and you're either going to have decided to learn that instrument or not. Okay? And no one ever looks back and regrets the time they spent learning. No one ever looks back and says, boy, I really wish I didn't have my master's degree. Boy, I really wish I didn't know how to play this instrument so well that I spent years doing. What a waste that was. Nobody does that. The only thing that they do is say how they regret quitting or how they regret not trying, right? So it's okay to be where you are, okay? And that's something, as a multi-instrumentalist, can be overwhelming. And also you can look at it this way, that it doesn't all have to be done immediately, okay? And it's okay to look at what you have to do next and do that thing, okay? Because sometimes things can pile up on you and then nothing gets done, okay? So it's okay to prioritize, to put things in categories, and to say, this is what I'm going to do for today. I'm going to learn these 4 chords on the guitar because I want to. Instead of, I have no idea, I'm a percussionist, I'm never going to learn how to play guitar. So if you want to, then take that one day, and it's okay to do just simply what's next, okay? Otherwise, the weight of the world can drag you down, okay? Because there is if you put everything in all that you have to do in one big pile, it's a lot, okay? So it's okay to take the next step. Did that answer your question? Or did I go off on a tangent there? I don't even know.
I think you went off on a tangent. My question was more about how did you like, what was kind of your like first like instrument that's more like cultural, and then going into that to where it took you to learning like basically almost every instrument.
The first instrument that I learned that was out of like the classical realm of percussion, I think that it was the doumbek. I learned how to play the doumbek. And she's gone. She's out. That's it. And she's back with her doumbek. That's what I thought was going to happen. Yeah, I was actually, I was somehow, I was doing some shows at a theater in Chicago, and it was called Dance Chicago, was the concert series. And it was a dancing show, but some of what I do has some dance elements to it as well. And so I was invited to perform at Dance Chicago as a percussionist. And I don't know, you can go on YouTube and watch some of my videos, and there are some like dance elements to it. But I was also invited to perform with some other dancers, and one of them was a Middle Eastern dancer. And sometimes they're called Middle Eastern dancers, and other times they're called belly dancers, right? So I was invited to do that, and so I started to study, what kind of accompaniment would these dancers want, and it turned out to be a doumbek. So that kind of started me on my cultural path of learning different instruments. It's an awesome instrument, isn't it? It's because it's so sensitive to delicate playing, yet you can really get going on it too. But the finger techniques that you can use on a doumbek and the different ways that you can manipulate the drum head and the bottom are really really something. So doumbek was it for me. There, that was a more direct answer, right?
Still
yes,
a good.
yes, thank you.
I thought your tangent was really good too, so it's all good. Tom, we've got one more question for you, and it's going to take us back to Will O'Rourke, who's going to ask you about a little bit about Styx.
Hello there.
Hi, Will.
Nice to meet you, sir. Thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
Huge fan of Styx and Dynasty Young music. I grew up on the '80s rock and roll, so it's cool really nice to meet you. So I'm curious with that, if you could talk about your time working with Dynasty Young and maybe how he was to work with as a musical artist, and if you could also talk about how you got that gig as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a fun guy. So here's how that went for me. I was, again, here's the idea that everything like feeds into everything else. One thing leads to another. Everything is circular. I was performing my own show at a festival that he was performing. And some of the guys from his band kind of wandered over because we were performing at different times, kind of wandered over to my stage and saw me perform my show. And so afterwards we got to talking, and when I discovered that there was going to be an opportunity for the drum position to change, I was invited to audition based on them knowing me from that show. So what happened there was a series of about a summer long of learning and auditioning Styx music. And it wound up that the first time that I went there, there were about 15 guys that were invited to this private audition. And the next time I went, there were 9, etc. And actually, one of the things that happened during kind of the waiting period of waiting to go in and audition for this group, for this guy, I got to talking with one of the other drummers, and he's like, I mean, I had been practicing this stuff. Like, as I said, as I had mentioned earlier, I don't go into anything with music if I don't have to. I know it back and forth, but backwards and forwards by the time the first thing happens. And that's just the way that I feel I need to approach things. And I was talking to another guy who was going to audition, and he's like, well, I'm not really going to look at this stuff much until I know if I'm going to get it. I was like, okay, well, that's one less guy that I have to worry about. Because you have to, again, you just have to be like completely prepared. So that led down to, less and less guys over about a summer of learning this music, that I did realize that if I didn't get the job, that I had spent quite a bit of time learning these songs. I grew up with that stuff too, so it wasn't like it was a painstaking thing for me to play that music. It was a lot of fun. But that's how you get the gig, okay? Is you be the most prepared guy. It was a lot of fun. The music is fun, and he's a fun guy. This idea of I'm going to go back to that festival where I was and where I met those guys to begin with. And I'm going to say that, sometimes people say in order to make it in this industry, you have to be in the right place at the right time, right? You hear that a lot. Well, the right place and the right time are still both about you, okay? Because there really is very little luck involved. It's more about the right place being the place that you have put yourself. Okay? I put myself at that festival. And the right time is how prepared you are. Because if you are invited to do something, I mean, how many times have you guys, or has it ever happened that you've been invited to play somewhere? Or even just spontaneously play where you are right now, and you said no? Well, then that wasn't the right time, right? You maybe were in the right place, but weren't prepared to play, weren't ready. So neither the right place or the right time are luck. Nobody just falls backward into a great gig, okay? So putting yourself in the right place and putting in the effort and the work to have it be the right time are both on you. And that's what I feel happened with that show. And yeah, from there, I performed with him for about 8 years. And it did overlap with my work with Mannheim Steamroller. And it got to be to a point where the overlapping was going to be too much. And so I had to make a choice. And it's never fun to make a choice between two great things. But for me, I feel like I made the right choice, and I'm very fortunate to have had that time with him. The music is fun. The group was fun. He's a pretty funny guy. And of course, playing that music, that you grow up with which both of these groups I'm doing, is really a remarkable thing that is pretty rare. So again, I feel very fortunate to have had that experience.
And I'm just curious if you could share maybe a memorable moment from on tour with Dennis DeYoung. Anything is just, you know.
Yeah, some of my favorite moments with him are you know, times that I can just listen to him sing. You know, he has an amazing voice, and the music is fun, and it's fun to play, and there's a lot of challenging, like, ways to challenge yourself with the music, and you can play very aggressively with it. But more so, you know, some of my favorite moments were songs that I wasn't doing a ton, or a part of a song that I wasn't doing a lot, and just kind of knowing that I was part of this history that he, again, 40 plus year, probably more than that now, 40, you know, 50-year career that he's had. So yeah, even more so than just one show. I know I did revert back to this earlier. I really enjoyed that Summerfest in Milwaukee. That's an iconic festival that I really enjoyed playing that. That was, again, one of those sea of people type things that, you know, is something that people dream about. I've always wanted to just be successful and inspiring. The fame part of it, any sort of fame that has been attached to it, is not as important to me. And it's more important to me to make a personal connection with people. And I know I really enjoy, after my shows with Mannheim Steamroller, I don't know when we're going to be able to do this again, but we would always meet the fans, and that was a really special moment for me, is to meet people and make those personal connections. You know, really more so than like I'm playing arenas. You know, I mean, it's cool, but it's for me, it's always been more about success allows me to be inspiring. And so that's what's been most important to me.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Tom. You've made a personal connection with us tonight. We've really enjoyed listening to you talk about your passion for music, your dedication to sharing with others, and also your ideas about, for these young people, about their building their career, about them making their decisions and listening to their music. We want to thank you so much for being with us. This time has flown by, and I want to thank all the students for their fine questions too as well.
Thank you, guys. Those were awesome questions, and they were challenging for me, so it was a lot of fun. And I do want to say this: you guys you are so fortunate. I know you know it, but to be where you are and to have the teachers that you have, I mean, you are on the right track. Okay, so you know, as you've heard, I'm a big proponent of getting as much education as possible. You guys are in the right place, so keep going. You know, I'll leave you with this, and I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to play, but I will leave you with this tonight, and that is, you know, where you are right now, you are coming up on a time in your life where this is a really awesome time for you. You're coming up on a time where you're going to have to make some choices about what you want to do next, and where you're going to go from school when you do graduate, and when you graduate again, and when you decide that you are going into your profession. There's going to be an easy way, okay? And there's going to be, you know, there's the path of least resistance, the easy way, and there's a path that's going to be your true purpose. And sometimes, oftentimes, those paths are not going to connect. So it's important that you know that each one of you has something to give. Each one of you is unique. And each one of you is special. You have gifts that are unique to you alone. And if you do not share them with the world, they will be lost. So it's, any job that you have after school, it's good to have a job, okay? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's better if your job is leading towards a career, okay? And all of that said, when you see someone that's doing their life's work, remember I said at the beginning that I was going to come back to life's work, okay? When you see someone doing their life's work, you can tell. And no one is going to do your life's work but you. Someone doing their life's work is giving, they are sharing, they are teaching, they are happy, and they are at peace. And you will know when you see one, but you will feel it when you become one. It is okay to be passionate, and it is okay to be emotional. It means that you care. Okay? And look around our world right now. We need you. Everyone goes through troubles, and everyone goes through difficult times, but you are also all filled with great love. And it is with that love that I want to say goodbye tonight and send you out to share your gifts and to lift our world. Okay?
Beautiful, Tom. Thank you so much. If all of you with us, please give Tom a round of applause. Thank you so much for your dedication and your heartfelt words. Thank you so much. Everyone have a beautiful evening.
You all take care. I know that I will see you again. Okay, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, Tom.